the minutes?
Motion to approve. Go ahead.
Awesome. Is there a second?
Second to approve.
All right, all in favor, just raise your hand or say aye. Excellent. Well done. All right, so the primary agenda item for today.
I also wanted to let everyone know that the recording has started.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, I was slightly late on that.
That's all right. Thank you. And here comes George. George, if you are able to, would you kindly just state your name and the location from which you are joining us today, please, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I'm sorry I'm late. But anyway, my name is George Alber, and I'm calling you from Centerville, Virginia. In my home. I was in my car, but I just got here.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. So the primary agenda item today is just to have some collaborative open discussion about the draft report that Denise also sent out for you all to review and consider. And then subsequently, there was another preliminary timeline that Gretchen and Mary were kind enough to work on that was sent out as an addendum to that report. And we can talk about that as well. And I also just want to extend my thanks and appreciation to all of you for the really thoughtful, insightful conversations we've had over the preceding months, all of which was instrumental and greatly helpful and very much supported completing that draft. Before we jump into that open discussion, there are a couple of related administrative items just to touch on. Denise has been in communication or had been in communication with Supervisor Stork's office regarding some next steps that I also just want to share with you so we're all on the same page regarding where we go from here, and then we can just focus in on reviewing the draft report itself. First, there was as you know, we're required to submit the draft report by the end of this month, and we will certainly be in a strong and good position to do so. And there was some question about the process by which we would do so, and then the timeline for the board of supervisors taking up consideration of the report. So what Supervisor Stork's office has relayed to Denise that I want to share with you is that once we are comfortable with the draft report by the end of this month, our next step is to send it to Chair McKay. And it looks as though the chairman has suggested that the board will consider the report at their meeting on July 13. I will plan to participate in that meeting. Other members of this work group are certainly welcome to participate in that meeting. And you'll recall that there was the question was, would they want to consider it at the July 13 or the July 27 meeting? But it does look like they will want to consider it at the July 13 meeting. If we want to present any additional request, budgetary or otherwise, then we would circle back to Chair McKay and Supervisor Stork regarding the best process and approach for doing so, both in terms of the format and the time frame. So that is something that we'll just put in the stay tuned column for now. The only other sort of administrative update in that regard, Chair McKay and Supervisor Stork are going to discuss how best they would like us to present the report and how they will present it. In other words, will it be a board matter or will it be incorporated into the meeting format in some other way? So I don't yet have that detail, but those of you who would be interested in participating in the board meeting where it will be at least presented, just mark your calendars accordingly that will be on July 13. Any questions about that? All right. That said, I will just make a few brief introductory remarks. So as you saw, and as I hope you had a chance to read and review, I have structured the report, the draft report, in the following way. I've tried to provide just a brief introduction on the nature of our work. I've also tried to provide some background and context for the Semiquincentennial more broadly. And that section, as you noted, included some information about the Federal Commission as well as the Commonwealth Commission. I've tried to provide an overview of our activities And as you will recall, one of the very first things we considered as a work group were the core themes that were identified by the Commonwealth Commission. So I have included them again as I think important and helpful, very much relevant information within the context of our draft report. And beginning in that section, you will also note that I have included very specific recommendations based on our conversations that are in bold in the draft report. One of the things that Supervisor Stork and the board matter stressed, as you'll recall, was that this report did include recommendations and sort of recommended action items going forward and not just be a narrative. So beginning in that section on key themes, you will note some very specific recommendations. Again, I hope you found that all of these recommendations were related to what we have been discussing. That was certainly my intent. There is a longer, larger section about the preferred approach, which does include a fair amount of narrative description, but also includes, I think, some very specific recommendations, again, born out of our discussion. Some of this concerns administrative next steps concerning the nature and composition of this work group, as well as a discussion about the committees that we had been talking about previously. And then in the last two sections, one of which focuses on SMART goals and one of which focuses on recommended ways, means, timetables, approaches, etc. While there are recommendations in each of those sections of the report, I have also noted, as you saw, that a more comprehensive articulation of SMART goals and recommended ways and means and timetables, et cetera, will very likely need and most appropriately be driven by the next phase of this conversation and this planning effort. So what I have recommended, again, based on our discussions, are those preliminary steps to get the ball rolling. It does not include, as you know, specific recommendations for the type of events or the content or focus of those events. I think that that type of detail will come in subsequent phases of our planning. So all that said, again, I hope you feel as though the document reflects what we have discussed. And please know that, again, I appreciate all of your support and your insight and your participation in the process. And also, please know, I have no pride of ownership, so I am very open to any suggested edits, changes, additions, or modifications. And with that said, what I would like to do is just have an open conversation about the draft report now. Anything that you think is particularly strong that may need additional reinforcement, anything that needs to be edited, adjusted, added, or subtracted. And then what I would like to suggest is, obviously I'll be taking some notes, but I also recognize that it's possible that my note-taking may not capture every comment. So I would like to ask all of you, based on this conversation, if there are items that are critically important to either incorporate or amend or edit, that you also perhaps follow up via email with me. So I want to make sure I don't miss anything. We've got 2 weeks to sort of get this in its final draft form and sent off to Chair McKay. And I just want to make sure I don't miss any of your perspective as we go through that next step. So I will try to capture everything, but if there's something you feel particularly strong about, I would also appreciate just follow-up email. So the floor is yours, my friends. Jump right in with whatever you want to comment on, and we will go from there.
Great. If no one's going to say anything, I'll start. First of all, this is a tremendous document. You did such a good job. I didn't know what to expect, considering the time crunches, and this is just amazing, Scott. So kudos to you for pulling everything together that we've been talking about for the last few months. So
Thank you.
thumbs up, good job, applause. I had one small thing just for you to consider. It's not a huge deal. I was looking at page, let me make sure I'm on the right page. Page 7, recommendation 4. Create and convene an advisory council to support the planning entity and ensure broad and inclusive community awareness. Maybe we could talk about, and shorter might be better in this situation, but do we want to add anything to this about, is the advisory council, is that something that the Board of Supervisors would generate or make recommendations to, or is that something that would come from the work group? If you felt strongly either way, or you don't care, or if we just want to make that small, what's the right word?
I think that's probably an important clarification, Gretchen, so I appreciate you bringing that up. I would suggest, unless others feel differently, that we probably ought to add some language to that particular recommendation regarding who will nominate and or appoint these folks. My assumption was rather in writing this, that whatever the planning entity is that evolves out of this work group would identify those folks. But we probably need to clarify that and at least frame the question regarding whether they need to be, I don't know from an administrative perspective whether an advisory body needs to be formally appointed by the supervisors or not. That's a question we can ask, but my thought was that the planning entity would at least identify those folks.
Okay.
Unless others feel different.
I would say, this is Mary, I would say that they would recommend people rather than identify, just to say, that we're not the definitive answers here, that we could recommend members of the advisory group.
Sure, that makes sense.
To be appointed by the Board of
The Board of
Supervisors?
Supervisors, yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense to me. Others feel comfortable with that? See nodding heads, that's great. All right, Gretchen has broken the ice. Good work. What else?
Gretchen broke the ice. I'll dive in the pool next. The thing that, and just to echo Gretchen's comments about the excellence of your document, Scott, I felt the same way. And the thing that struck me is that I felt you did a wonderful job in just putting in writing how this group is striving to include all areas of the community in this commemoration. I think that the supervisors will appreciate that. And it just struck me because we had gone over our previous commemorations that we had worked with countywide, and it's like we had this in mind and we strove, to go out and accomplish this, but just to see it in writing, I think will make them feel comfortable that we're going to do all that we can to make that a reality with this commemoration. So I was just, I was proud to be a part of this group before, and now just to see it in writing, I just think it's a wonderful document that they, meaning the supervisors, will be proud of as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. That was certainly, the inclusive approach was certainly a priority of Supervisor Stork and very clearly articulated in the board matter. And obviously that's something we all feel equally strong in. So I appreciate the sentiment of that being adequately captured in the draft. So thank you. And Cameron has echoed that in the chat. So thank you, Cameron.
This is Laura Wickstead. I just wanted to agree with what's been said. You did a beautiful job of providing context and backstory so that then bring us up to the future and what we're looking ahead. When I read the line, fulfill the promise of the Declaration of Independence, I got goosebumps, I think. So just superb. A librarian comment on a typo on page 6. There is.
Oh boy.
Let's see.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome. The paragraph for all these reasons while there, use the possessive there instead of the whatever is it an adverb? THERE? On page
Which
6.
paragraph is that, Laura? I'm sorry.
For all these reasons.
Oh, I see it.
Yep.
Oh, yep.
Well, other than that, it's perfect.
All right. My mother was an English teacher, so I will not tell her that I.
No, we won't
completely-
tell her. It's
All right,
easy
thank
to,
you.
and your fingers move and your brain thinks, so
Good.
thank you.
This is a public meeting, so I guess the word is out, but maybe it won't make it to mom. Thank you. I appreciate that. Other thoughts, comments? Things that we need to change or amend or clarify? All right. Want to make sure we don't miss anything. I should have said at the outset, I did share it with Denise first, so Denise did have an opportunity to review it and had a few comments as well that were incorporated into the draft that you received. So I don't want you to think as though Denise, who has been with us from the beginning, her comments weren't incorporated, and they have been.
Scott, will Supervisor Stork have an opportunity to review before it goes to Chairman McKay?
That's not entirely clear to me because the instructions that were relayed to me from Supervisor Stork's office was that it go to the chair. But I kind of am thinking that I need to clarify that point because I would think he may want to see it before it goes to the chair. I'm just not real clear on what the protocol would be. So I will clarify that point. All right. So you all are welcome to share additional comments if they occur to you after this meeting concludes. But for our purposes today, I want to make sure everybody has a chance to share anything. But if you don't have anything, of course, that's fine too. But so sort of last call for any comment. Otherwise, we will assume with the two changes noted to date that the draft is more or less in final form pending whether or not Supervisor Stork would like to review before it goes to Chair McKay. Do we all feel comfortable with that? All right,
Yes.
I'm seeing heads nod. Great. So, thank you. It's an exciting moment for us all. Good work, everybody. So let's take then a minute, and Gretchen and Mary, I know y'all were kind and generous enough to pull together sort of a draft timetable.
Excuse me, Scott, may I interrupt?
Yes.
This is Laura Wickstead. Something just popped up in my chat. Someone asked.
Well, yeah, it's a community participant.
My understanding, Kyra, correct me if I'm wrong, but based on my prior conversations with Denise, my understanding is that the community public participants are welcome to listen, but I don't believe it's time for public comment. Kyra, can you confirm or clarify that? I certainly want to do what's appropriate, but I believe that's what the protocols are that were communicated to me.
If that's the protocols that were communicated towards you, then those are the ones that we're going to go with.
Are there actual comments that are being presented, or people just asking if they can make a comment? I'm not seeing comments for some reason.
It appears that some of them are just being commented towards myself or to all the panelists. It's in the chat function.
All right. Well, how about I just make the suggestion? I do see the comments now. Thank you. And again, I don't claim to be a definitive expert in Fairfax County meeting protocol, but I do believe from my prior communication with Denise that the members of the public who are joining us today are welcome to listen. And I believe on the website there is direction as far as sharing public comment. I know in the instance, there was an instance in a prior meeting where we had a member of the public join us, and their comment was ultimately relayed via the public comment link on the website. I will just add, seeing the comment, that the question of it being a commemoration is addressed at length in the document. And I don't know if I have anything further to add to what is articulated in the draft document at this point, although I respect and appreciate that question. And obviously, as all members of the work group know, we discussed that very topic in terms of language at great length. And I think the page or so explanation of our recommendation specific to the term commemoration, I think, is captured in the draft document, which was posted publicly. And I don't have anything specifically to add to further address or answer that question beyond what we've said there. So if Mr. Ryan, if you would like to make a comment through the link, I think that is fine. And I will apologize in advance if I'm not understanding the protocols properly. But again, that's my understanding. And if that's incorrect, then I accept responsibility for that. But in any event, as far as the timetable, again, Gretchen and Mary were kind enough to take some time and to build off our discussions to date about timing. So Gretchen and Mary, I don't know if you want to say anything by way of introduction to the timetable. Obviously, the timetable that you all have presented is also, I think you all would agree, preliminary, and a lot more detail will have to be fleshed out as the planning effort continues. And I think it largely dovetails very nicely with some of what is included in the draft report, but also provides a framework a little further out for some critical action steps. So if you all would like to say anything by way of introduction, and then I'm happy to open the floor for discussion about that.
You want me to say something, Mary, or this was your brainchild? Mary, you're on mute.
There we go. I was just based on what we went through with the 275th celebration, and so took our ideas and put it into a general framework, and Gretchen was enough to add more and actually put years into it. So we have some kind of concrete, expectations of what should be done each year until we end up to the 2026.
Yeah, so we're just trying to kind of drill down a little bit deeper into kind of tasks, especially for the next 2 years. And like you said, you outlined most of them in the report. I don't recall off the top of my head, I read the report a while ago. Was there anything in there about reaching out to other jurisdictions, or is that something you want to?
Oh, in the
say
report.
later?
In the draft report in its entirety, I don't think I specifically stated other jurisdictions, or we specifically stated other jurisdictions. I think it was possibly inferred, if not specifically stated, in some of the committee structures that we discussed. There was the outreach committee, and I think in the description of that committee, it referenced, I'll look at it again. It recommended coordinating with appropriate organizations and entities. So I don't know if we go into any more specificity about that, Gretchen, but I'll defer to others whether we should do so.
And that's fine at this point, I think. You gotta leave something for your second report.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyway, this was kind of something we thought we could start using when we could go down to the committee, something we can build on that just kind of generate, kind of like a plan of action. So that was the intent. There's not much right now I personally could think about in 24, 25, outside of events really starting to take hold and, start building the momentum for 2026.
Other thoughts? Just taking a few notes, forgive me, but so one question I would pose, do you all want me to attach this preliminary timetable to the report itself as an appendix, or what do you think would make, no? Okay. I see Gretchen shaking her head, no, what do others think?
That's just my opinion. I think your report is great as is and should move on. I think once committees start meeting and this can be fleshed out a little bit, then perhaps we could submit like a 2-year action plan. And from that, you start to develop your budget and things like that. But we just wanted to kind of get the conversation started with this, and it's by no means ready for prime time.
Okay. Everybody seems to be in agreement with that.
There are, there's a couple things, and I don't know if you want to talk about this now or at the next meeting is fine, but, establishing social media accounts. I mean, there's probably protocols within county government, I imagine, but, there's things that need to be discussed and formalized to get permission, and some of this will take some time. And so maybe a discussion with the communications department and how they would like to see some of these things done. And, some of those initial conversations can start once we kind of get into the committee structure.
Right. No, I think you're right about that. All right. This could be our shortest meeting yet. Is there anything else about our work, or anything else about next steps, the report, the timetable that we want to make sure we address today by way of Q&A or open forum?
What happens after the Board of Supervisors sees the report?
That will be largely up to the Board of Supervisors. I mean,
Okay.
I think what we are recommending is that this work group transition into a larger planning entity, and some of the recommendations that we have identified in the draft report get put into motion in terms of moving forward with the planning effort, setting up the committees, identifying a fiscal agent, all those good things. I mean, I would imagine the Board of Supervisors could take any action that they thought was most appropriate regarding next steps, whether it be they want additional insight or recommendation or perspective from us, they're happy with it as is. I just don't know what their reaction will be. Certainly, it's my understanding that the board holistically is supportive of the larger 250th semi-quincentennial effort. I think it just remains to be seen whether what we present, to what extent they take action upon what we present by way of our recommendations. I would guess, I mean, some of you have more direct experience working with the Board of Supervisors than I. I don't know whether to expect it will be just a one and done on July 13th, or whether they'll want us to, come back and have further discussion. I think we just need to wait and see. And I
So
think-
Scott, once you have made, the typo and changed to the advisory committee, can Denise send us back out that report? And my question to you is can we share that with like the larger history commission in its draft phase?
That's a great question. I mean, I'll ask Denise that question too. I would guess, Gretchen, that what Denise will advise is that we don't share it until the Board of Supervisors receive it. I would guess, I mean, I guess it's a public document, so I mean, I don't, I guess that what I'm saying is incorrect. I mean, it's posted on the website, so I guess anybody can go see it.
Well, we can ask Denise too
Sure.
what her recommendation is, because if she takes it and moves it to the next level, I guess depending on whether Supervisor Stork wants to weigh in or not, then we can proceed. Or, I can send a link to this meeting.
So at what point does it go from draft to final?
I think that at this point, it becomes final, specific to presentation to the Board of Supervisors. I don't, I think what we'll clearly be submitting to them is a final report from the work group. So I think we're at the point where it transitions from draft to final. Now, as you all know, anything that has to go through subsequent review by any entity is still in some way, shape, or form a draft, but what we will present will be the final report of the work group. All right. So I can't remember if we talked about this before, but on the Monday morning after our meetings, I always have sort of a check-in with Denise, just on any next steps. And obviously, those have occurred throughout our time, and with her not being with us today, obviously it'll, be a more detailed conversation on Monday, but I will ask these questions when I meet with Denise Monday morning, and then we'll just follow up accordingly with all of you. And I think, what I'll likely do is, since there are so few proposed changes, is not wait to the end of the month, depending upon whether or not Supervisor Stork wants to see it before it goes to the chair. Once we make the few changes that we've discussed today, I think I'm just going to go ahead and send it to Chair McKay as soon as it's ready to go. I don't think there's any need to wait till the very last minute to do it. Then it's off our respective desks, and we can just wait and see what happens next. Any other Q&A or open forum conversation?
Can I ask you about applying for the VTC grant in September?
You absolutely can.
The that deadline's gonna come pretty quickly,
Yep.
considering everyone's will be on summer mode. Is that something you want a smaller group of people to work on so that you don't bear that brunt entirely?
Yeah, I think it would be very helpful to have like 2 or 3 of us that worked on different aspects to that. And I think that would be very helpful. I think certainly from my perspective, I mean, those of you who are familiar with these grants will certainly know that it includes, obviously you have to have a narrative description of what you're asking for. You've got a lot about audience and evaluation, and obviously a budget. I think that's probably 3 ways in which we could naturally divide and conquer the work for that. I think, Patrick, we would probably look to you and your expertise and those of your colleagues at Visit Fairfax for some guidance around what perhaps we are asking for and what some of the costs would be. I think we would very much want to engage Visit Fairfax as a partner, because I think all of these grants require a partner. But obviously don't want to put you on the spot and assume anything, but I think we would certainly want to have a conversation with you and Barry and Visit Fairfax about, you know, how to collaborate in that effort. And I think some of the other institutions that are part of this work group and would ultimately be part of the planning entity, we would want to also consider as being partners. I think, as you all know, at least in my experience, successful grants to the VTC in many ways really capitalize and leverage on the broadest cross-section of community partners. Certainly that's been the case at Gunnison Hall. So, you know, whether it's Mount Vernon or the Army Museum or some other entity, I think we would be open to pursuing partnerships in support of that. But yeah, in short answer, Gretchen, I think having a small sort of 2 to 3 of us that tackled that would make a lot of sense and create some efficiency, I think.
I would volunteer Liz to assist with any sort of evaluation, audience, and things like that. I'll just put that out there. You can thank me later, Liz.
Happy to do that. Happy to do that. I'll renew my subscription to SPSS.
And I'll be happy to help as well. And I think it's required with VTC that a DMO be a partner in any grant application that they put out there. We ask them for money all the time, so I see these applications on like a quarterly basis. I'm getting ready to ask them for more money by the end of this week. So, and they're good people, so I know them and who reviews the grants and stuff like that. So
Great.
Glad to help.
We have 2 open grants with the VTC right now too. So, and one that's closed that we're doing all the post-grant reporting on. So it's, they're really a great group to work with. So I echo that, Patrick, and really some opportunities for some meaningful impact and return on the investment with those grant programs. I don't have a clear sense of what we would ask for, but, you know, I think certainly some initial seed money is my thought to begin to get some word out collaboratively about what we're doing. And I haven't really thought about it strategically to any larger extent than that. We'll have some time to at least figure that out, not months, but a little bit of time to figure that out. All right. Other questions, open forum comment? All right. Well, I will again extend my thanks to all of you and my thanks to those members of the public who have joined us today. Of course, we look forward to the next steps in this process and in this effort. And again, I couldn't be more pleased and proud of the great work by all of you, and just really honored to be part of this journey with you, and look forward to where we go from here and our conversation with the Board of Supervisors. And we'll certainly follow up. Either myself or Denise will be sending out some stuff and following up with everybody next week in advance of sending it off to Chair McKay. Anything else at all?
Are we planning on meeting in July?
I don't think at this point we're going to schedule another meeting, Mary, but that's a fair question. I think we need to wait and see what the board decides and how they want to proceed.
Okay.
You know, it may be that however they decide to proceed, you know, there may be other partners within county staff that will need to get involved. And certainly we'll want to, you know, one of the key recommendations, as you recall, is to diversify and enlarge the composition of this effort. And I hope to be able to stay involved, but they may want somebody else to chair it. You never know. So, Gretchen, you would be fabulous, as you all would. So, but in any event, so I think at this point, Mary, fair question, but I think we just wait till after July 13th. But I do think we need to stay attentive to some of these timelines. Obviously, we don't want this to be something where there's not some collaborative effort around planning for the 250th that lags for a period of months. And I'll sort of stay in touch with Denise over the intervening weeks to make sure that nothing gets lost in any sort of transitional mode. And I'll make a note to ask her about that as well when I speak with her on Monday as far as transition.
Well, thank you for all your hard work on this.
No, you're very welcome. It's been good. I think it's like all of you, I'm very excited about the opportunities associated with the 250th for our county, for our Commonwealth, for Gunston Hall, for our nation, and just really excited to be a part of it, as I know y'all are, and looking forward to what comes next. So if there's nothing else, I would accept a motion to adjourn or entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Patrick, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
George? All in favor? All right. Well, great work. Thank you all very, very much. Stay safe and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a
We'll
lot.
talk to you all later.